the markets are very, very sort of manipulated by our governments. The classic, just moving off gold and silver for a moment, a classic is oil at the moment. I mean, the oil price has been suppressed basically by the Americans drawing down on their strategic reserves, which are now pretty well running on vapor or will be very shortly. And if you look at gold and silver, there is a similar sort of situation insofar as the central banks and the Chinese and so on will use our prices, if you like, as a reference price. But they don't put the stuff through the market. It's all dealt off market. So, it's, and China has very successfully used this in the past as a means of controlling the silver price, because it's been importing doré and particularly non-ferrous ores for refining, and had, if you like, as a result of that, an accumulation of silver. And they basically have used that as a means, if you like, of backing their shorting as producers of futures contracts in silver. So they've been able to suppress the price. And they've done it very, very effectively. And I think that they've worked with someone like JP Morgan in doing that over the last 20, 30 years. So this is something which really means that the validity of spot prices that we have actually doesn't really reflect the true position. And I think there will be an adjustment. I mean, as an old stockbroker, I remember, we used to, you find that you come in one morning and there's a sort of been a change, if you like, overnight in something or other, something major, and suddenly you got a completely new level of prices. It was a sort of reassessment. And I can see that happening. But the nasty kicker in this is that if we wake up one morning and find, say, silver has begun to really, shift up and it's being revalued, actually what we're looking at is a devaluation of our currencies, the purchasing power of our currencies. And that is a major, major problem. That's, as I was saying earlier, I mean, we're going to find that basically G7 economies are bankrupt. And the thing that will really bring this home is when bond yields go above that 5% level. I don't know where they'll stop. I mean, if someone told me, do you think it might go to 20%? I'd say, why not? I mean, because basically government bonds will be uninvestable. I mean, they're already, there's, you raised the question over Japan, 240% debt to GDP. And bear in mind that when GDP starts going down, that ratio goes up. And would you want to buy Japanese debt under those circumstances? I mean, even let's say 6-month debt as opposed to 10 years. No, you wouldn't touch it with a barge pole. So that is the frightening future that actually we face.
There's a parallel story playing out in metals markets. Major players, central banks and China especially, tend to treat the public spot price as a rough guidepost rather than what they're actually paying, since their real trading takes place quietly off the public exchanges. Some analysts suggest China has spent decades building up a silver stockpile as a natural byproduct of its ore refining industry, then using that reserve to keep a lid on futures prices, reportedly with some help from major Western trading desks. Whether or not that particular story is accurate, there's a real and ongoing disagreement among metals analysts about whether the prices we see actually track genuine supply and demand.
We know that there is an agreement between China, Russia, and Iran to provide technology, to provide advice, whatever, all to do with defense and so on and so forth. This is not Russia and China actually going to war as in partnership with Iran. No. You could be slightly cynical and say it's rather like NATO uses Ukraine. They might be using Iran. But actually, Iran is completely independent. It's taking its own decisions. It's got America on the hook. As I was saying earlier, it's a lot like, fishing with a big fish on the end and light tackle. They're being very, very careful about reeling in the Americans. And, it's up to the Americans. If they want to crash the global economy because they're too embarrassed to admit that they screwed it up, then as far as the Iranians are concerned, that's their problem. And China and Russia see this. And quite frankly, the stupidity of NATO and particularly the European leaders.
Yeah.
The approach of Macron, Merz, and Starmer, and now presumably Burnham. Have they got no sense of history? Do they not understand that nobody has actually managed to break up Russia, conquer Russia? What happened when Napoleon tried it? Not what happened when Hitler tried it? Come on, folks, wake up.
Same with Iran.
Yeah.
Never been conquered.
The only sensible thing, the only sensible thing as far as the Europeans are concerned, I tell you, if I was head honcho in Brussels or wherever, I would kick out the Americans and say, you have been perfidious, horrid people. You basically have created wars in the Middle East, which have given us an immigration problem in Europe. So we don't want to be with you anymore. We don't mind trading with you, but go away. We don't want you. And I would go to the China Russia bloc and say, right, let us set up a sensible relationship with you. Let's talk in diplomatic terms about how we might cooperate in the future. Do they actually think that Russia wants to invade Europe? They're talking about, I can understand the Latvians and the Estonians and all the rest of it being rather nervous, and the Poles, with their history. I can understand their nervousness. But realistically, does Russia really want to take over parts of Europe? No way. The only bit that it wants to take over is the Russian-speaking part of Ukraine, which is the Far East, and Crimea, which was sort of gifted into Ukraine by Khrushchev, but was never really part of Ukraine anyway in the first place. Wake up, lads. That's the way forward, not a way which is just leading to an acceleration in our own decline. And the next thing that's going to happen is our currencies are going to be completely worthless. Words to it. It's just the stupidity of it, I find, is absolutely extraordinary, and words just cannot describe it. You've got this element in America, which, is, whether it's Jewish lobby or whatever, Zionist lobby or whatever, which is actually completely divorced from the reality of life outside America. And I think this is, if you like, it informs US political opinion. We don't mind people dying outside America. They can die in their millions. We don't give a damn. And if we kill them, we don't give a damn. The one thing we don't want to do is have body bags coming back with Americans in it. So, if they decide to invade Iran in order to, free the Straits of Hormuz, that's what's going to happen. If they tried it now, you're talking about temperatures of 45 to 50 degrees centigrade, for which American troops are not, they're not accustomed to it. And they would need, I would think, at least 2 or 3 weeks in order to become accustomed to it. Probably more. And, as far as the Iranians are concerned, you're talking about a nation of 93 million people. This isn't a...
well-educated people.
Yeah, well-educated,
very well-educated,
with a culture.
Yeah.
Just look at the, estimates of sort of as much as 15 to 17 million people who turned out for the old Khomeinei's funeral. And who killed him? The Americans. With the Israelis. And they will seek revenge of that. This is something which I think is very, very much in the Islamic way. This is why they have fatwas and things like that. They will seek revenge.
Yeah.
This is not something, the American idea that, you can beat the hell out of someone and they will submit and then surrender. This is not that sort of situation at all. It really is not. They've just succeeded in uniting 93 million people against what they call Satan, which is America.
Imagine gold and silver prices suddenly jumping. Some analysts would push back on the obvious read, that metals just got more valuable, and argue instead that it's the currency that got weaker. That's not a small distinction. It reframes the whole story. Not things got expensive, but money stopped being worth as much. And devaluations tend to follow that pattern historically. They don't creep in slowly, they hit fast, usually right after a stretch where everything seemed fine.
I think the objective is to get America out of the Middle East. What we call the Middle East, they're now calling West Asia. That quite clearly is what Iran will want. Now, when they go, then at that stage, I think there will be peace, but not until. The other thing is that the future of Israel without America becomes a huge, great question, imponderable, if you like. The Netanyahu approach, if you like, of trying to create a greater Israel, absorb your enemies and then neutralize them, genocidal tendencies and all the rest of it, that has obviously failed. It would have failed particularly once the Americans leave. I can see that what Israel would have to do, I think, is to go cap in hand to the Russians. Because bear in mind, something like 20% of the population of Israel is actually a Russian Jew. Go to the Russians and say, come on, we need to pacify our neighbors. We need to change our approach so that it is acceptable to our neighbors. Can you help us to do that? I think, other than that, if they don't go down that route, I think Israel's finished. I really do. That again, I think is a huge, great imponderable. And of course, this takes us back to America because the Jewish lobby in America is so incredibly powerful that it puts Trump in an extremely awkward position. Not only has he blown it, but to my mind, he's now become very, very unstable. Does he actually think that by charging 20% on all exports going through Hormuz, where did he get that? Extraordinary.
He pulled that within 24 hours, didn't he? But they'd be happy to throw him under the bus.
I'm sure you're
happy to throw him under the bus.
Yeah, I think that's a fair conclusion. As you say, we'll see with the midterms. But if he loses control, I think, of the Senate and Congress, then I think it becomes a racing certainty that he faces impeachment. So, but again, with a president who is effectively very, very unstable, emotionally, every other way, then can Russia and China really afford to have him on the world stage? The only way in which he can be eliminated, I think, is to crash his currency, which is why I think, it's all pointing that way. And I think this, if you like, we can have some confirmation that this is the case when we look at what China is actually doing in terms of protecting her own currency. What's she protecting it from? She's protecting it from the demise of the dollar and the other G7 currencies which align themselves with it. To me, it's really quite simple. And I wouldn't pretend to be as clever as the guys actually running China and the guys in the top of Russia and all the rest of it. But, to me, it's just damned obvious.
The people pushing wealth preservation aren't chasing bigger gains. They're trying to shield what they already have from currency risk. Their case, bank deposits, bonds, even gold ETFs all boil down to a promise from some institution, not something you actually own outright. With an ETF, the fund holds the real metal, not you. Real protection in this framing means holding physical gold and silver yourself, kept outside the banking system and ideally out of reach of any one government's vaults.
Yes.
What I can do is help individuals protect their wealth. It's no longer a question of increasing your wealth. Forget that. It's a question of protecting your wealth. And there's only one answer: get the hell out of credit. And for the avoidance of doubt, currencies are credit. And we know that because if you look at the balance sheet of the issuer, central banks, it appears as such as a liability of the central bank. A liability is the other side of credit. It's all credit. It all depends on the valuation which creditors put on the stuff, and we can see why that valuation is going to collapse. Get out of credit, get into physical money, which legally from Roman times has only been gold and, with a subsidiary role nowadays, silver. Simple. I think the other thing which is worth mentioning is don't store your gold and silver in such a way that it is easy for your government to grab it off you. Keep it out of the banking system. Don't store it in the banks. You could probably store it in the vaulting system if you store it in a secure location, in a vault not owned by an American company, because an American company would be bound to act on instructions, if you like, of the American government. I leave it up to individuals to decide what they want to do, sort of in terms of how much they have at home. I mean, we're lucky in the UK because we've got coins of the realm, which are not liable to capital gains tax. Well, not at the moment.
Yep.
There are ways in which you can look after your gold and silver. But for really big boys, this is why I'm now an advisor, strategic advisor to von Gretz. We've got private storage facilities in Switzerland, basically, we comply with the law and all the rest of it. Of course we do. Nothing is 100%, but I think if you go that route, and also for more retail type business, gold money, which offers you a variety of vaults in different jurisdictions, at least have some of it in that, or maybe the bulk of it there, so that it's just that bit more difficult for governments to grab it off you.